So that video quickly became one of our most popular videos. And, unfortunately, when he passed away, it got a new life.
1985, Villanova shocks the world by upsetting Georgetown.
1996, Princeton Tigers upsets UCLA Bruins.
In 1997, Coppin State upsets South Carolina.
2018, the first ever number 16 seed UMBC upsets number 1 University of Virginia.
Everyone loves a great underdog story, the huge upsets, David beating Goliath. But what happens when there are no upsets? When the only people you get to see and hear from are famous people, the superstars, the head coaches, the celebrities. Are their stories more important? Do they matter more? Everyone puts in the same work, the same time, the same sweat. So who hears their stories? From the walk-ons, the assistant coaches, the role players, the 10th man off the bench. Everyone has a story and everyone has a voice. And on this podcast, you will meet these people, you will hear their stories in their own voices.
This is Underrated.
Welcome to Underrated. I am your host, Ray Hutter, along with my fantastic co-host, the smooth David Capers.
Thank you.
Always
Thank
looking good.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
How you doing today, Dave?
Doing pretty good, man. I can't complain.
All right, we have a great guest in house today, Sean Gregory, the senior correspondent for Time Magazine Sports section, and a good friend of ours, and a heck of a basketball player. We'll get to his story. Sean, how are you today?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me. This is exciting. I'm very impressed. I've told you off camera. I want to say it on camera with the production and the studio here. You guys are off to a professional rocket start.
Well, like I told Ricky Johns, who was here last week, that a lot of people that come on this show, their career just skyrockets.
Yes, I'm excited.
I see
Good
Pulitzer.
momentum.
I see Pulitzer in your.
It's not on my resume yet. This is the start. I'm going to start campaigning for it now.
Yes.
You got to make sure you come back when you blow up, man.
Yeah, of course.
That's right. That's right. And we're also reaching out because we got a little CHSA theme going on. We got Archbishop Stepinac, where I went to high school, Cardinal Spellman, where Dave coaches, and Sean, you went to Fordham Prep.
Went to Fordham Prep. Should have wore some Fordham Prep gear. I apologize for that, but as a journalist, want to stay neutral, know. But yes, Fordham Prep, and so my son played against Dave's team at Spellman 2 years ago. Dave was first year as assistant coach there. And, we had some great battles with Stepinac. Back in the day when I was there in 94, you were there in 91.
Yes, graduated in 91.
So Stepinac is now this national power, but they would play lowly Fordham Prep 2 times a year back in the 90s. And
usually 2 W's.
Well,
it was 2 W's against us. So.
I mean, in a weird way, we can get to this maybe, but when I was a senior in high school, we upset Stepinac was the best team, and we upset them in the playoffs, and that was a huge win for me personally because it got me to Princeton. Because the next game, the Princeton assistant coach came to watch, and I had a pretty good game. If we don't beat Stepinac, I don't go to Princeton. So it was a huge. It's funny, like you think about those. Glory days moments and stuff, but like a high school basketball game 31 years ago is responsible for a lot.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Well, I don't want to make this about me, but
I'm already talking about me.
No. But when I graduated in 1991, that was the springboard to Stepinac having a great run of teams. Before that, I think Marty Conlon was there back in the 80s, but the 91 team was the team that made Stepinac on the map again.
And were you the starting?
I was a starting guard. I wasn't the star. We had a couple other people. I was like the role player that did all the little things, but played about 32 minutes a game, which is pretty much the whole game.
So basically, you was underrated.
I was underrated. I was underrated. I mean, I don't want to say that I was elected into the Hall of Fame because it's not about me. But, I mean, but I was.
Man, Dave was in the NCAA tournament. He's here listening to your high school glory days. Come on.
December 23rd of or 2023, if you want to know and look it up. But no, Sean, seriously, thanks for coming. Fordham Prep graduate. You mentioned Princeton. Obviously, when people think of Princeton, we actually have it in our montage, one of the upsets when they beat Georgetown in the opening montage. And you had a legendary coach, Pete Carrill, at Princeton. And you had a pretty significant upset yourself with your team. So why don't you just talk about from Fordham Prep to Princeton, how it happened, and we'll talk about your Princeton career.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I mentioned, went to Florida Prep, and, I was just very, very thin in high school. Didn't, you look at Dave. We all play together.
Yes.
We're still in our, you're maybe over 50?
Yeah, it's fine.
You're approaching 50. I'm approaching 50. So, the bonds that we have through basketball are fantastic. But anyway, when I was a lot thinner back then, and so being a Division I player was obviously like the dream, right? NCAA tournament, March Madness. I grew up like so much of us, watching the first round games, watching the cable. It was on cable and doing the brackets, and so playing the NCAA tournament was a dream. And so I decided to go for it. And so my level was probably Division III academic. I was recruited by a lot of Division III schools. But my senior year summer, I won the one-on-one contest at 5-star and played in a few nice things. And I got a little bit of notice and had a good fall, and then scored a lot of points my senior year of high school, and we had a pretty good team. And so, all of a sudden, schools like Columbia were interested. So those were long shots for me. But Princeton was they weren't involved at all. Really, Columbia was the main Division I school that was kind of recruiting me, and not that passionately, to be honest. But I was gonna go. I would have preferred to go to a Columbia Ivy League school than nothing against NYU. Binghamton was D3. They were recruiting University of Chicago, great schools, but my whole thing was just, I want to try to play Division I basketball.
Sure.
For come hell or high water. And so Columbia, I did have an opportunity to go there, but at the very end, as I mentioned earlier, so we were, kind of a ragtag team, middle of the conference, and Stepinac was that year. They had a bunch of guys who played D2, 3, Bobby Andrews, the Doyle twins.
Yes.
These are names. You're going to grow up in the city, right?
No, I'm from Jersey.
You're from Jersey. Yeah. Okay. So mid-90s around here in New York City, they Mark Hoffman, who played at St. John Fisher, a lot of really good players. And they were undefeated in the league. And in my 4 years at Florida Prep, we never beat Stepinac. Yes. Never. JV freshman. Never beat them. I mean, the year before, they had Chris Watson.
Yes.
Eric Abagbu, he was on that team, not a college basketball player, but playing the NFL. So they just had so many. Llewellyn Cole was the year before, and who played at Providence. Yeah. But the year, my senior year, was Eric and a lot of D2, D3 basketball players that were really good players. And so that game was it was the semifinals, and it was probably going to be my last high school game. And Columbia was actually there. They came to watch, which was cool, which was all right, I got to play well in front of them. And we upset them. It was just this huge, glorious upset. And it was an ugly game, and I didn't play. I played okay. There were some guys at our team a guy by the name of Brian Scanlon, a great friend of mine. But anyway, a very good shooter, but just came out hitting every shot. It's okay, we have a chance. We have a chance. And it's funny, you guys play with me, I'm very left-handed. Mm-hmm. So Eric, it's maybe it's sad that I remember this, but Eric Abagbu was guarding me, a guy who played for the Jets and the Cowboys, and it was late in the game, and I went to my right for the first time ever. Right. Hit a right-handed layup.
Shocked the world.
It shocked the world. An under minute, gave us a lead, or it went a little back and forth. It wasn't a buzzer shot, but it was a momentum-building thing. I remember saying to back then newspapers covered high school games. And I think I said to a lot of the reporters, was that big moment. I made a right-handed layup for the first time in my life. It was a miracle. And so anyway, it was just, and I talk about it with passion because it's one of those moments where, so the next game we were in the city championship against St. Peter's out Staten Island. Right. And that was division, we called it B back then. It's now called the A. It's Division II, as I like to call it. Now it's St. Raymond, Stepinac, Hayes are Division I, kind of Florida Prep. Division II, I think Spelman now 3, and anyway, it was a Division II, B championship, and I was at St. John's Alumni Hall. We had a busload of kids, and they kicked our butt. Sadly, they kicked our butt. But Bill Carmody, and I didn't know this, thankfully, because I probably would have gone in my own head, but I didn't know. But Bill Carmody, the assistant coach at the time, Pete Carroll's assistant at Princeton, was at the game. And I think I had 30 or something, in a losing effort. But did a lot of good offensive things, I guess. But so I think somehow I knew they were going to call me. I forget how. There's no cell phones or text, right?
Of course. Back
And
in the
somehow I got wind that like, oh my God, Princeton's going to call. Like Bill Carmody, they're interested. And so Coach Carmody, get on the landline, and it's like, well, you didn't make any threes. Like it wasn't like come to Princeton. It was like, you're really skinny, you're slow. Every deficiency I had was pointed out. And that was how they did it, their style. Like that was their style. I mean, I'm sure there were better players who were a little more complimentary, but if you all these guys who played for Coach Kirill, it's kind of the same recruiting story. It's not like, come, we love you. It's more like, you suck at this, you suck at that.
No praise.
No praise. But all right, but we can there's
use
something there that we
You
kind
can
of
set
like.
screens or
Yeah. So I remember telling Coach Carmody, like, there was no tapes or Instagram highlights or. So I remember telling him, like, he's like, well, you didn't make any threes. I'm like, well, I made 5 threes the other day in the other game. Like, I was telling the truth, but he had no idea.
Right, of course.
So then I went down there, and it was the same thing. My recruiting visit was late in the spring. I stayed with 2 seniors, 2 great guys who were but they were about to graduate. Didn't want to host them. They'd been hosting recruits. And actually, they're both coaches. A guy named Chris Mooney, who coaches at Richmond, and Mike Brennan, who's now an assistant coach at Princeton. He was the head coach at American a few years ago. Coach at Georgetown and as it says in other places. But 2 really great guys. But they were seniors on their way out, and they had to host one more late recruit. and I remember sitting there at the train station with Coach Kirill taking New Jersey Trans on the way back, and it was very honest, just him and I, just like, hey, you really got a lot to work on. You're not one of our better players, but there's something about, for some reason, you scored 30. They love that I had a nose for the basket. And so and it was great. I didn't play much over my 4 years, but we were really good. And then this is maybe the long way getting to UCLA. My freshman year, I didn't know the offense at all. My sophomore year, I got in there was a point in the season where he was like, we're going to try Sean a little bit. I got in the end of one game, hit a shot against Penn, which led a kind of comeback, but we were never going to really win. Mm-hmm. It was one of those deals, when you hit a 3, with a minute left, that it's kind of like, it's going to go in because all those shots go in. And then it just sparked a comeback, but they were ahead but it was a nice moment for me. Mm-hmm. Gave me a little confidence. But then I was like, kind of our better players start playing well, and we won the league and went out to Indianapolis, the Hoosier Dome.
Nice.
Where the Colts played back in the day. It's not there anymore, but it was the site of several national championship games, and it's a huge dome.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah. Huge
dome, and we got out there for practice, and we're all kind of looking around, like, oh my God, UCLA. And I remember I was on the scout team, and I was Charles O'Bannon, Ed O'Bannon's brother, and that's who I played because I was lefty and he was lefty.
Right.
And
there's a lot of similarities between.
Oh yes, I was some great scout team players. I was Dana Dingle. He was like 6'7", long, strong. I was Tony Gonzalez one time, who was the NFL tight end who played at Cal and killed us my junior year in the NCAA tournament. He played basketball too. Yeah. So I did poor imitations of very good players on the scout team. But that game was like we had won the league, beat Penn. It was like we were kind of happy to be there. Coach Kirill announced his retirement. He was retiring after the season. So it was just kind of this whirlwind. And the game started out, they went up, I think 7-0 or something. We were missing everything, getting our shots blocked. It was like I was sitting there being like, it's going to be a long night.
Right.
But it's this really magical thing where, a big moment in that game was before halftime. We ran a play called center forward backdoor, where the center gets it at the elbow and there's a backdoor cut on the wing. And then you don't throw it the first time, then you look the other way, and then you look back, he does it a second time. And our freshman forward, Gabe Llewellys, got it before halftime. He was on by like 7 feet. Like it was like, whoa, like they were just not ready for that or didn't care. I mean, I did a story about it later on. When I became a writer, I actually did a 15th anniversary story on the game. It spoke to a lot of the UCLA guys, and some of those guys admitted that, like, yeah, we kind of looked past Princeton. Right. And so that gave us, and that made the score. I'll never forget, 1918 Princeton. This backdoor layup right before halftime. Imagine 1918, like how depressing a score that is. But we played the slow down, cutting style, and we had to slow it down to stay with them. We kind of hopped, skipped, and jumped in the locker room. It's like we have a chance. And one moment that's not on the TV broadcast, but that we saw like during a timeout was Reggie Miller was at the game, and he went to UCLA and he was playing in Indiana for the Pacers at the time, and the crowd, like midway through the second half, as it became apparent that we were hanging around, the crowd, which was pretty neutral, a few Princeton fans, a few UCLA fans, but basically like Indiana basketball nuts, of course are going to gravitate towards the upset. It's like Hoosiers out of a movie.
Of
like
course.
all these Indiana's a great basketball state. Brad Stevens was in the crowd. I found out later. He was I think he was a student at DePaul. He was a player. He was there as just a fan.
Right.
So a lot of basketball people were started to root for Princeton because it's the underdog thing. So Reggie Miller, the Indiana hero, right, is in this Hoosier Dome in front of 30,000 people or whatever, and he comes on the board. He has his hat on backwards. Comes on the board. It's like, yeah, everyone cheer Reggie, and then he turns around, puts UCLA, booed, boo, like 30,000 boos. I'll never forget it. It was amazing, and that's when you knew, kind of like, wow, like this. And then you find out later all these people are watching on TV, and so we pulled it out at the end. The game was tied. We called timeout, and then all the assistant coaches said at the same time, center forward back door, that play that we ran at the end of the first half. Charles O'Bannon was guarding Gabe Llewellyn, the same guy who made the cut. He knew he was a little less surprised, but he still got beat just barely. And Chris Johnson, I don't know if you know that name, remember Marcus Johnson?
Yeah.
His son Chris was a good player in the 90s and played at UCLA. And I talked to him after the fact. He's a great guy, and he came to help, and he swears he got a fingernail on it. So Gabe gets the ball from our center, Steve Goodrich, and goes up for a layup, and Charles just missed stealing it, I think, and was close, and Chris came over to help and just missed blocking it. He made the layup, and you see Gabe come down, and it was on the broadcast, I believe, because he's running down. You can see him mouthing, "Oh my God!" He goes,
Yeah, I remember
oh my
seeing
God.
that.
He said, "Oh my God," at who's running back. And then there was this whole delay. They tried to get the ball up, timeout. They had one more shot. Toby Bailey had a decent look, but Sidney Johnson, our captain, who's now coaching the Washington Mystics, coached at Princeton and other places. Now is the head coach of the Washington Mystics, a great leader, great guy, great defender, great college defender, and just got close enough to Toby Bailey to bother the shot, and then all us bench guys, it was just mayhem. It was just and
and that same team ended up winning the NCAA tournament, I think, a couple of years later.
UCLA?
Oh, I'm sorry, UCLA. Yeah.
UCLA won the year before.
Right, okay,
They were the
all right,
defending champions.
All right,
so that was another thing I should have mentioned.
Oh,
they were
wow.
the defending champs. So
Right.
they were defending champs. They had a lot of their guys back. Ed O'Bannon had left. He was a big glue, but they had won in '95, so this is '96.
Okay, yeah.
And they were defending champions. Yeah, and they had a good team. I think they were the 3 seed or the 4 seed. We were the 12 or the 13.
You were the 13th. They
We were the 13.
4,
They were the 4. Yeah. And
What year were you that year?
I was a sophomore.
Okay.
I was a sophomore. Yeah.
And the final score was 43-41.
Yeah. Not a lot of
43-41.
Not a lot of modern 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, we made a lot of we took a lot of threes, but we worked the clock. It
Yeah,
wasn't
of
like
course.
first empty.
The 4 corners, Princeton backdoor.
Yeah, it was a lot of passing and cutting and moving the ball, and a lot of that stuff. Coach Carrill, you got to give him credit, was kind of adapted. Like his philosophy on basketball is basically, we joke about it, but I think there's some, and even the Warrior guys have said this, he was ahead of his time as far as analytics, and he didn't know how to use a computer. But all we wanted was a 2-point layup or an open 3.
Right.
That's all. All this cutting and drifting and passing was all designed because we didn't have players who were going to do a off the dribble pull up on Charles O'Bannon. So we had to kind of play that way, and I think Coach Carroll then went to the NBA after he retired, and kind of, with the 24-second shot clock, it's obviously not going to be the same.
Right.
But a lot of those principles, when he became an assistant for Sacramento started doing some of the stuff that we did at Princeton. It was but they had Chris Webber and Vlade Divac, and they can hook pass and dunk, and it was beautiful to watch. So in 2002, Byron Scott was an assistant with Coach Carrill at Sacramento in the late 90s. Byron Scott gets the Nets job, brings over a guy named Eddie Jordan who played at Rutgers as an assistant. They had all been in Sacramento with Coach Carrill. So now in 2002, you have Coach Carrill as an assistant in Sacramento, and the Nets with Byron Scott and Eddie Jordan, and Jason Kidd is their point guard.
Right.
That's a guy who could pass and throw these crazy backdoor passes and stuff. So they were both in the conference finals that year.
Yeah.
And that was the year Sacramento kind of got screwed by the refs, and there's conspiracy theories. The Lakers wound up advancing. But that was almost like we were rooting hard for – the NBA probably wasn't rooting hard for a Sacramento Nets final. But we were, because as Princeton guys, because it would have been like all the stuff we worked on 6 years later being kind of I'm not saying the same offense, obviously, but those principles on display. So it got pretty close, and the Nets ran a lot of that stuff. And Princeton offense is kind of faded from view a little bit, the kind of old-fashioned Princeton offense. But the basic principles of moving the ball, sharing the ball, getting good shots, threes, open threes, and layups are basically what all the NBA teams want. And the Warriors, so I interviewed, or I saw, the Wall Street Journal did a really good story in 2016-17, crediting Coach Kirill for, in a distant way, kind of building those principles, and the Warriors kind of being the epitome of that philosophy. And the Warriors guys didn't disagree with that.
Yeah. So Cape, you had an iconic moment. We did the first interview here on the podcast, and you hit those 3 foul shots, sending the second overtime. Sean, you went ahead and experienced college basketball at a very high level. And like I said, in our opening segment of Underrated, we talk about how Georgetown got beat by Princeton.
Well, let me correct that. I know it's the opening montage, but maybe it could be tweaked. Princeton did not win that game. Georgetown won that game. It was a 1-point game. Yes. I didn't want to say anything, but as a journalist, I can't let it go away twice.
We need to fact check then.
I think so. I don't know if you want to tweak the opening of the show.
Oh, come on.
But you can leave it. It's fine.
Don't blame
it's
me.
the principle.
Let's blame our production crew back there.
I was going to let it go the first time. I do have to mention it. But yes,
Wow.
but it was. But to your point, it doesn't even matter. And it kind of speaks to that game. That game in 1989, although Princeton lost by 1 point, it was the highest rated NCAA game on ESPN to that point. And after that game, CBS said, you know what? CBS only had the rights to the regional finals and the Final Four. And the Sweet 16 and the Final Four. They said, you know what? We want the whole thing. We want these upsets in the first round. We want Princeton, Georgetown. And so the next year or 2 years later, CBS paid $1 billion for the rights to the whole NCAA tournament. So we did a story, and that's been called the $1 billion game.
Right.
So you're pointing the right game. It's just that Princeton actually didn't win, but a lot of people don't know that Princeton didn't actually win because it was a very important game.
Well, here's the thing. All right, you talked about you beating Stepinac your senior year, and now you're pointing this out. I'm just going to walk off the show. Right. Who invited Sean anyway? Really, my goodness, the production company. We got to talk, production people.
Tweak it.
So, and the reason why I bring it up is because both of you played in the March Madness tournament, and then you guys also ran in post your career at Princeton. You guys ran in at the New York Athletic Club, I believe, and I was never invited to those games, but but you guys played in those. So tell us, because we've talked to Ricky, we talked to Cape, and they played overseas, and you and I were like trading messages today just about like, okay, I just want to make sure we have our facts correct.
I did not play professional basketball.
Right,
Thank you for checking.
Sean played in the NBA for 14 years.
Yeah, let's just get all of this. Yeah.
So when are you going to Springfield?
Man, but no, like the New York. So Dave was I think I can remember starting playing. So I started playing there like 2001, 2. You were probably still playing professionally, but my 20, I was those basketball games at the New York Athletic Club were just like amazing. I mean, you were and you said you played against Carmelo and J.R. Smith and Allen Houston, but I was maybe a little lower level, so I would get invited when kind of when there was a need for another body, and so I remember when Dave came in, probably in the mid 2000s, but but it was great. Like in my early 20s, I happened to work in Midtown, and getting invited to play basketball, to play against like Dave Capers, and you find out, he played at St. Bonaventures, and for me, like Zendon Hamilton from St. John's, and Eric Murdoch from Providence used to play. Sean L. Scott from went to All Hallows, went to St. John's, played in the NBA. So there were guys who, not a ton of NBA All-Stars. I mean, you might have played in those games, but like for me, it was just like great college players. A lot of my teammates played. Guys named Jason Ozier, who we know, Jesse Roosevelt. So, I was kind of like tagged along, but got to play competitive basketball at against these. And so me, I always loved being like on a court where I felt like I was almost didn't belong, because it would be 100%. Like, all right, I want to be the worst. I want to be the guy who, is like the least qualified guy to be here, because then it's like I have to step up my game. When you're in your 20s, you're not playing. In your 30s, you're not playing for money. you're playing for kind of pride,
Yeah.
right? So you're playing for pride, and so going up against Dave or going up against Sean, I was like, you know, when I was in college, I played against Danielle Marshall in a pickup game and like scored on him. I told all my friends, you know, like I love that stuff.
You want to feel like you belong.
Yeah. So I would tell, and the guy named Milton Lee, who I think, you know, I don't know if you know Milton Lee, but you know, he's a interesting guy who might be interesting to have on this as a guest. Like, you know, was kind of like a networker, worked as a GM for the assistant GM for the Nets for a while, just as a basketball junkie, and he had access to the NIAC. He was kind of the poobah of these runs,
Yeah.
and so
Right.
you had to kind of be Milton's friend, and you know, like, and just be nice. Don't be an asshole to Milton, and you might get invited.
Sure.
You didn't want to be on that list.
No, you want to
Bad
be on the
list.
bad list. But we'd have to go through the elevators because we didn't have jackets and stuff. We weren't members, so we had to like go through the there's dress codes and stuff.
Of course,
And so we had to change in different locker rooms sometimes. But it was for me, it was like the peak of competition, and it was on a Tuesday night in New York City.
Sure.
But again, it's just it's for a healthy thing to do. You make connections. We were all know each other through basketball.
Right.
And
Who
that's
was,
what
who was one of the best athletes at the run that you played against?
There's a guy named Brian. Remember him, Brian Matthews? Is that his name?
Brian
From Iona.
Matthews, yeah,
B-Matt,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Brian
yeah.
Matthews from Iona. He
Both
played at
team.
Iona.
Yeah.
Right? Great player.
Yeah.
You know, an underrated kind of guy, but I think he was a very good player at
Yeah, he
Iona.
was.
He was kind of really tough to stop. I mean, Rod Strickland played there once. That was really cool.
Yeah, of
like, I
course.
mean, yeah, like he was. I remember Chris Collins played there for a bit. But the best, I mean, Strickland, I think, played once he was kind of out of the NBA or towards the end. There's also a guy named Eric Strickland, like a street ball legend.
Yeah.
And who unfortunately passed away.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't know some of these guys, like Tim Gittins, like Headache. So you know, I don't know if you've heard of Headache, but like
the N1 stuff.
the N1 guys. So like he was, you know, I think he still plays, right? He's still doing stuff.
He's a coach. He's a high school coach now. So
But this guy was a legend in the street ball world, and it was great education for me to meet a guy like that and like, you know, try to guard him. It was
You
fun.
know, I'm feeling so much better about our Saturday runs. I mean, all the guys you played against, and now I'm playing with you guys, and I'm like, wow, you know, this is fantastic.
No, I mean, I will say about the Saturday run, I mean, the guy behind the camera, let's give him some credit. He's really fast. Juan Pablo, the producer. Like, you know, there's some still, I mean, I don't know if viewers are that interested in old man basketball, but I will say, like,
Whoa, it's competition, baby.
no,
all right?
no.
Let's not say
I think
old man.
We all, like, if you're lucky enough to be near 50 or over 50 to be able to still play,
Yes.
God, you know, knock on whatever, and play, you know, Dave's still playing at a high level. We have Kenny Bear, who's 60, almost 60, if not 60, who could still bang shots, and Jason. So it's like, I think it's like the height of competition.
it's
you know, like
fantastic.
it's fantastic. And more than that, it's just the friendships and the being able to just be healthy and make social connections. It's
Yeah.
better than pickleball.
No, 100%. And we look good doing it.
Of
know what I mean?
course.
Like, you know, we have a lot of fun. I mean, you look the best, obviously. but,
I mean, that's the reason why I go to the run. You guys make me look good.
you know, we all walk in and we're like, oh shit, Dave's there.
Well, and let's shout out our friend Mike Coburn, who,
Yes.
you know,
yeah, he's going to be on here.
play-
But we're working with his people because
I know.
he's a little bit of a prima donna.
and he you know, and he yells at you for screwing up.
Yes,
and
he
so being able to, for the last 13 or so years, to wake up and be yelled at by a Big East point guard is
Yes.
such a point of pride. Talk about pride.
So Mike played at Rutgers, and we're going to get him on the show. But
Yes.
He's going to have some stories.
Well,
with his
he
coach
is,
and
but
stuff.
he's got a little bit of an attitude. Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Prima donna.
Translator,
Yeah,
Mike,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
If you don't roll right on the pick and roll, or you miss a shot, like I mean,
He's looking for NIL cash that he couldn't get
Right,
at
exactly.
the Big East in 2011. So it's
Exactly.
makeup time for him.
So let's switch gears here, right? So we just talked about your career playing, your time at the NYAC, and now you're working for Time Magazine, and you've been doing that for a long time now.
23 years.
And so you're a senior correspondent in their sports department, and you've had some significant interviews, and you've had some great experiences. So talk a little bit about what you're doing, how you became a journalist, and we'll talk or have some questions from that.
Yeah, I mean, I had an uncle, my aunt's husband, named Jim O'Connell, who was a very notable college basketball writer. He probably covered your game, and your game was in Long Island. against Kentucky?
No,
You were-
Cleveland.
Cleveland. Okay.
And we fact checked that.
Fact check that. Sorry. Touche, Mr. Ray. Touche. So he was he covered college basketball for the Associated Press and went to the Final Four every year and knew all the coaches. So when I was a kid, I was like, you can do that. Like you can get paid to write about sports. So it was this kind of eye-opening thing. I remember he used to get me the media guide. I have them in storage, like old school NBA media guides, physical media guides that he would get every Christmas and give them to me because they were like left over. Nobody else wanted them at the Associated Press. They were like duplicates or whatever. So I would like, kind of like study information and like, I want to write about this. I want to cover this stuff. And so that's how I kind of wanted to be a sports writer. Out of college, I was playing basketball in college. So, journalism is different. Like you can do it in college. You can't be a doctor in college. You can't be a lawyer in college, but you can be a journalist in college. I really didn't have a ton of time to do it because I was like, I want to play basketball. Of course. And I have no regrets about it. But it put me a little bit behind. So like when I got out of college, I took a job as a financial analyst because I needed a job. I didn't have enough experience to kind of get a journalism job, but I had done a little bit of writing in college, enough to go to graduate school, did a year there, and then got hired as like a summer intern and just kind of did anything they wanted.
Right.
And wasn't, and just kind of hung around. And so I started out as a business journalist, and then they had sports, they weren't covering sports that much. So I was annoying to the managing editor saying like, we should do this sports story. We should do this sports story. And, when I first started, other people would write them and I would help. But then I started writing a few and they were, they passed muster with the editors. And once in journalism, at a place like Time, once you prove you can write on deadline and it's not like big editors have to come in and fix your stories. Once they trust you, it's like they want, you can do more and more and more and more. Right. And that's kind of, and the internet helped me a lot because, in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, we started to want more online only content. And people weren't doing that a ton. Right. Maybe we were a little bit late to the game in the grand scheme of things, but a lot of writers didn't want to do that. And I was young enough and kind of was like, I want to write, like I want to get better. So the more I got to write, that stood out. That helped me that I was willing to embrace the internet and writing for the internet and the magazine. So a lot of my, now probably I don't know, it depends, but like 80% of the stuff I do probably is online only. Recently doing like Instagram Reels, like that's where it's not a writing thing, but doing stuff on camera and sending cell phone video, that stuff gets a lot of views, and that's where you want to be, where eyeballs are at. In the internet, early days, like that was more eyeballs on your stuff, and so. And then one thing, I think we talked about it off camera, but was the Kobe Bryant video was a different, because I've written a lot of cover stories, long form cover stories, but YouTube just kind of started in 2006, 2007, and Time was like, we should be doing videos. We should be doing more videos. And I had this idea, like, why don't we call it Free Lesson with X?
Right.
And we'll go to these athletes and say, you know what, we're not going to ask you about so Kobe Bryant, for example, we're not going to ask you what you think about Phil Jackson. We're not going to ask you, your relationship with Shaq these days. We're not going to ask you kind of the stuff that the Laker fan day to day wants to know, and athletes don't love talking about.
Right.
It's like, here's the pitch. Like, we're going to do a video where you just you teach me as if I'm a dummy, and I'm the conduit to the fans, like basic basketball stuff, either for kids or for like weekend warriors. That was kind of the pitch. Weekend warrior, like little tricks for weekend warriors. And we'll do it, and it'll take 20 minutes, and it's your show. I'll ask some questions, but you can lead whatever you want. And the pitch is like, it'll be relevant 2009 through 2025, through 2040, because you're Kobe Bryant, and those lessons, how to play the game doesn't change. Right. The fundamentals don't change. So God bless him, he bought it. Like, he was like, great, I wasn't communicating directly, I was communicating through an agent, and he was like, in. Like, I'm like, okay, fly to Oklahoma City. I was nervous in the fact I couldn't believe he was doing it.
Right.
Like, I couldn't, like, he's buying my idea. Like, and also he's giving the time to share his knowledge. Right. And I'm kind of the conduit. So I'll never forget, it was an off day in Oklahoma. It was the first year the Thunder, they had just moved from Seattle. 2009, it was their first year. They were terrible.
Right.
I think Durant was there. Westbrook was a rookie and Harden was still in college. He would come the next year. So they weren't, there were signs, but they weren't the Thunder of today. They weren't the Thunder of 2012 when they made the finals in 2009. I think PJ Carlesimo was the coach. They weren't winning. So it was the ideal place to go because you go to LA, there's going to be a million media around. He's got all these commitments. You do it in New York, forget it. Like Oklahoma City was like the sleepiest media town. They had just gotten there. I just knew it was going to be. So we went to Southern Nazarene University, like a random college where they were practicing.
Right.
And it was funny. They ended practice, and all the students kind of came in, like, as I remember, they were kind of like there was like a track underneath, and they were all just watching us do this. Right. It was like they must have been like, oh my god, like I'm going to gym class, phys ed class, I'm going to the intramural gym, like Kobe Bryant's down there. So Kobe was like, he was just like, hey, I said. We had our videographer was just like, hey, I explained the concept to your agent just for 20 minutes, run through some drills and stuff and show. I think he, some of it was like how to do a foul shot. Some of it was like how to pin your defenders, like really subtle stuff, like how to pin a defender's arm and the ref won't see it. Right. Like, when you're on offense, kind of pin a guy, like stuff that like, what usable, teachable stuff.
Yeah. Tricks of the trade.
Tricks of the trade, exactly.
And we're going to have some of that footage, I think.
Yeah. And so that video quickly became one of our most popular videos. And, unfortunately, when he passed away, it got a new life because people went to it as like a memento. And at the end of the video, it's kind of sad when he says, I said, anything else to say? He's like, see you when I see you. It was like that was his sign off. And it's really, you watch that now, it kind of hits you harder, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
And so I think people gravitated towards it. And so I swear every month or so, even 2 weeks, somebody will send me either like, is that you? Because I was a lot thinner and my hair wasn't as gray. Or, oh my God, I know you did this, like, because it gets sliced up in memes and it gets passed around,
right?
And so it's been cut up and kind of passed. So we have 11 million views on YouTube, but I know it's been viewed many million more on TikToks and stuff.
Sure.
And so I hear from people like, hey, is that you? Like I hear about it constantly, and so it's a real. We did it with a few other athletes, but and then Masterclass. Basically, I like to brag. I had the idea for Masterclass before. Because then Masterclass figured out, we could do that. We'll pay Kobe Bryant and we'll charge the customers. And that's where you get that now. So I think it's a harder pitch now to do like a free lesson when people realize, we could all be making money off it. But God bless Kobe Bryant for doing it. It was the unbelievable experience, the way he was into it. And you could tell, I thought he would be a great coach moving from that. I know he didn't kind of want it. He was coaching his daughter's team at the time of his passing, but like the amount of basketball you just knew he knew.
Yeah, for sure.
And the way he explained it was very understandable, very down to earth. It was not like rarefied air. He was just a guy talking about basketball. He's really bright. Like, you can tell the brightness.
The IQ.
The IQ was all there. He would have made a really fantastic coach if he, at some point had chosen to go that path.
Sure. Yeah. So let me ask you something, because besides the Kobe thing, I mean, you're writing on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you come up with topics? I mean, do you want to cover Dave and his, 25 years ago? I mean,
the Dave Capers story, 3 foul shots, like on CBX. I did not know that about you, and I was really. I thought it was great to see it because I didn't know, and it's like an amazing. It's just such a clutch moment. For the Bonnies, St. Bonaventure, and I'm pretty good friends with Adrian Wojnarowski, who's now the GM, and I do admire St. Bonaventure's love. You all love your school, like that school up in the middle of nowhere. It's like a cult a little bit, but
it really is.
But no, as far as how to come up with ideas is, we just did a cover story with Serena Williams, like. We did what she's up to now. So that was like a business related story. We did so we have these things, like we do 100 most influential people. And so a lot of times the cover subject we'll put on the cover, I'll get to do a profile of that person. So a lot of times it's like, it's a natural fit. Like we did a philanthropy issue. David Beckham's a big philanthropy person. He was interested in doing a story with us. We got deep on his philanthropy and other stuff he's doing, which did really well and interesting. Caitlin Clark, was a story that got a lot of attention, was our athlete of the year. And that's a kind of, that's a kind of game of like, all right, we have to say we're going to make her athlete of the year to secure access, right? And so we had to make that call because there's competition for this stuff. We had to make that call pretty early in the. I think it was like in August. We had to kind of basically be like, listen, we're ready to do this. You got to come with us. We'll mutually agree to do this. But then, like, to her credit, she went out and had a kick-ass end of the year, right? Like, if she would have gotten hurt or really struggled, it might have just been awkward on both sides. On both sides. So we took a little bit of a risk, but. So in August after the Olympic break, she came back and was just killing, and they started to win, and it was just the obvious choice, I thought, and the way she in that story addressed all the kind of controversies that surround her, but that she does nothing to instigate, and so it was really interesting to talk to her about, everybody thought you were being targeted by players because they're jealous of you. Did you feel that?
Yeah.
And she said no. Like, she thought it's just basketball. And like for her to kind of temper down herself, the kind of hysteria around her, I think people were really interested in that. So that became a very high performing story. So, we've done a lot of personality profiles. I've done stuff on, I will say Time on the cover of Time in 2013 said it's time to pay college athletes. I wrote that story. And, I'm not saying we had anything to do with that.
So you're basically the reason behind NIL.
I'm taking credit for NIL.
Well, you know what? Because and correct me, you already have, but correct me if I'm wrong. But the O'Bannon brothers really also started that.
Yeah.
Right? So you played Charles in practice.
I have a huge connection to NIL. I will say, and I think our story kind of helped propel the momentum. Jay Billis, you got to give him a lot of credit. He was one of the early kind of media stompers on this. There was a huge story in The Atlantic, I think, before ours came out, by a historian named Taylor Branch, who covered Martin Luther King and was a brilliant historian. He wrote a very in-depth story about how the NCAA was hypocritical and the players should be paid, basically making the same argument through history and very detailed. That helped momentum. But Ed O'Bannon sued was one of the first lawsuits because he was in a video game.
Yes.
And they realized they weren't using his name, but it was like 31 on UCLA. It was obviously him.
Right.
And so I forget the video game maker. Was it EA, right?
Yeah.
I think it was EA.
Yeah.
Basically would market this NCAA video game, and all these players were in it. And Ed O'Bannon was the one who was like, "Wait a second, you guys are making money off my likeness, my image." And so that lawsuit had some success in the courts, and it's been all over the place. But he's a huge NIL pioneer, much more than our cover story. But we could talk. I know that's obviously a huge
I think
huge
we'll
topic.
get to that. For sure.
I wanted to ask, what was the story that that you kind of felt the most passionate about that you've done?
So, because I've lived it. In 2017, another story that got a huge amount of feedback was we did a story about the professionalization of youth sports. And we put a kid on the cover whose nickname was Joey Baseball. He was, I think, 10 at the time, and he had like his huge Instagram following. And to Joey Baseball's credit, he's now going to Rutgers. Like he's going to Rutgers on a baseball. I don't know about scholarship. I assume some scholarship, but Joey Arachi was his name. So we had him on the cover, and his parents were spending tons of money for training, and so he kind of epitomized a national trend of just like when I hate to say back in the day, but like there weren't a million AAU teams. There weren't in all sports, right? Personal trainers, like all this stuff. There's a whole business that has been built around the hopes and dreams and insecurities of parents, basically. And so that story, and it's funny, like my son, I had to live it then. After I wrote that story, my son started getting into basketball, and I had to navigate, he wasn't like at the level where he's getting sponsored. So it comes out of your pocket. And these tournaments are where the coaches go, and like what team should he play on, and what not to do as a parent. And then you realize, well, I'm doing that. Like you're not supposed to emote in the crowd. And be a jerk to your kid. I'm doing it, and he will tell you that. And so, like, even though I did all this research and like what not to do, and and how to navigate the space. I still struggled with it,
Right.
And which means that like I had all this knowledge, and it's just a really tough spot when your heart and soul and you're trying to keep up with the Joneses kind of like you have to play AAU basketball, and now it's like little kids are playing AAU. It used to be Gauchos. Remember there were 2 teams,
right.
Nobody play. I didn't play my AAU was like a local guy who went to Mount St. Michael decided to get a bunch of Irish kids to be on a team, and we'd drive around and play. That was our there was none of that because I wasn't good enough to be on the 2 teams in the city.
Right, Riverside
That
Church.
was
and
that was
Gauchos,
Steph Curry and Felipe Lopez,
Right.
right? Like, and so I don't know about you in New Jersey if there was the same kind of situation.
Yeah, there was like maybe 3 or 4 teams.
Right.
You had your CBAs, your
Right.
roll runners, and
So 3 or 4 now it's 3 or 400.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Everybody has an AAU.
Yeah, and as I understand, it's like that in pretty much every sport.
Right.
Travel baseball, like you have to go to Cooperstown to, I know baseball parents who are hockey parents who have to wake up early in the morning and travel, and soccer, it's a huge stress and financial stress, and it contributes to also lack of access because it's like pay to play,
Right.
so it's unfortunate.
So let me ask you something. I mean, are we really, we at the point, David and I, are we at the point where, we may find ourselves at the end of the year on Times Magazine's cover
Well, I
page?
know you want the cover. We need UndeRAYted to blow up. I think David Beckham, Serena Williams, Caitlin Clark, and Ray Hutter and Dave Capers would be a great. Put that in the cover.
I mean, that's
Music
you
to
know what?
my ears.
Hey, listen, you don't even have to wait till August. We'll do this now.
You guys got to.
exclusive.
You guys got to, get the viewership up. Start doing TikToks. Start doing all this kind of stuff.
We're trying. We expect this, like I said, careers to blow up. So, this is it.
It's fun what you guys are doing.
So we're going to switch gears here, and let's talk a little bit about, real quick, and then we have to go to our final segment, which is overrated, underrated. But just real quick, being a New York guy, how did you feel about Coach Tibbs? And
Oh yeah, I was listening to it before I came a little bit on NBA Radar before the finals, and I'll credit Brian Scalabrine for this point. Look at the Pacers last year. They got swept by the Celtics, and they ran it back. They ran it back, and they advanced to the next level. So you look at Tibbs, like, all right, last year conference semifinals, this year conference finals. Why not run it back? And now it's just worrisome because what was the plan? Who did you're going to fire a guy? Who do you have?
Right.
You're just going into the abyss. Are you going to be comfortable if Kidd and Finch and Ime Udoka are off limits? Like, is it going to be Rick Brunson? Is it going to be Johnny Bryant, a first-time coach? Like, who are you going to get? So I just thought it was. I get it. He's abrasive. He gets on guys. He's a little old school and grumpy. But how do you fire a guy after 25 years of not getting the conference finals? You get there.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Let me tell you, right? I have a big opinion about this.
Yeah, please.
I'm not mad at the firing, but I understand it, right? And I understand it because you've gotten the Knicks to a certain spot, but how much of it was him? Like, okay, you got Brunson. And I've been one of those guys where I thought that Brunson was going to be going down as one of the greatest Knicks. I said that when he first got here. People were like, you're crazy. I'm like, watch.
Right.
And then he's bringing his team along, right? Yeah, and I think Tibbs does help. But I think, just think about this. Would OKC be the team that they are if they had Tibbs? No, because he wouldn't play none of the young guys.
Right.
You have to play a bench. When it comes to the finals, especially going in that deep of a run, you have to have some type of relief for these guys. And I think what killed them at the end was those exit interviews. Everybody, there's guys that are not returning, but then you also have Bridges in the middle of the season saying, hey, look, we have a really good bench. You need to play them. And then everybody's harping on that. And then the 2 games that you do play your bench, you win.
Right.
So it's like, I get it, but I understand it.
But can he learn from that? Can it be, all right, like, Tom, come on. Like, I mean, he seems like a reasonable enough guy that maybe he'd learn from that and play his bench more. But to your point, I get it. And, there have been examples of, like, fresh voices, like Steve Kerr coming in. I think Mark Jackson had some issues in Golden State. But, he got the team to a certain level. Fresh voice comes in, a new voice, a less abrasive voice maybe, a fresher voice, and they win the championship in Kerr's first year. I mean, that's lightning in a bottle. Can it happen? Of course. But like, to me, it's like you're running the New York Knicks are worth like billions of dollars. You're running this huge business. Like the risk reward, what's the calculation? Like, why do it right away? Do these calculations. Who do we got? So now it's like you get rid of your whatever you want to say about him, like historically good coach for the franchise. He got them to whatever you want to say. He's been historically a good to great Knicks coach. So you get rid of him.
Yeah, and in my opinion, I don't think Mark Jackson gets enough credit. And
that's fair.
I don't know
100%.
what happened out there, but all I know is he got him to that point. Next year, they win a championship, and no one's saying like Mark Jackson did a great job. Like I think he did. So I mean, who would you guys think should be the coach of the Knicks for next year?
I don't know enough about Johnny Bryant. Like I know that to name. You know, is a process of like. What about Rick? I mean.
What about Mark Jackson?
I've read some stuff that he's been out of the game a long time.
He's too old school, probably.
Maybe I don't know.
I would like Mark Jackson because he's a New York guy. He understands what it is, and then he's a point guard, right? So you're going to be coaching another point guard in the league, and I think that he will be able to bring maybe some of the stuff or that magic that he brought to Golden State to New York, right?
I mean, if you look at Mark Jackson, not to. He did a great job, but if you, again, reading a lot of, like, I think his offense in Golden State, they were a pretty good defensive team. He didn't use their offensive tools in the way that Kerr did. Like that's what the numbers say. Like they didn't pass a lot. I think that was the stat I saw. So they weren't a great passing team when you have Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. So Kerr probably unlocked that. I would say you want to get more creative on offense. Like there was a little stagnant, a lot of Brunson. So I would want a more proven creative offensive mind, like a Rick Carlisle, right? Yeah, but like Rick Carlisle's coaching the Pacers. Like Jason Kidd, like he got the Mavericks to a finals, played for the Knicks, is a brilliant basketball mind. The Mavericks are saying no. So I don't know who it is.
Publicly.
Right.
Yeah, publicly. Who knows?
Well, here's the thing, right? We may be on time to cover, and if Mark Jackson gets the job because of this podcast, I mean,
he deserved. He was pumping for Mark. So that's Dave's.
I thought I brought it. I can't win tonight. Stepinac loses. We got the wrong thing here. And now
you threw the alley.
I love
it.
Yeah.
I'm used to that. That I do.
I love Mr. Stepinac Hall of Famer. My first story is how my big win against Stepinac. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen. Let's end tonight. Thank you so much. But we're gonna go to our overrated, underrated segment, sponsored by our Chile Shades. So great sunglasses, and you get to go home with a pair.
Thank you,
absolutely.
Producer Juan Pablo.
And Juan's getting a lot of love tonight, even though he made a lot of mistakes. This guy. I'm kidding. I'll take that. I'll take it on. So we're just going to say some things, and then you got to quickly say overrated, underrated. You don't have to explain, but just
Can I explain if I want to?
If you have to, sure.
Okay.
But go ahead, Kate. You want to start with the first one?
The Ivy League Conference.
Ooh. Oh, man. Underrated from a basketball point of view. The numbers show it's been a better conference recently. I'm not just saying that because I played in it.
All right, just because I like to start controversy, Sports Illustrated.
Oh, man.
I mean, you can say no comment if you don't really want to,
No. Current Sports Illustrated, underrated. And I say that current Sports Illustrated, they've faded. They've had issues. They've had ownership changes and stuff. Their staff isn't as big, but they continue to do great work. And so underrated for sure.
Okay.
Load management in the pros.
Oh, man. That's a great one. Overrated. I'm going to go a little cranky on this. You look at, I know it's, just look at, I sometimes go back to some of the minutes that were back in the day. I don't want to seem like an old crank, but like guys would play a lot, and it does affect the fans, it really does. If you buy a ticket to see Giannis or Kyrie Irving and you're just kind of gambling, it stinks. I get it. I remember when Kawhi Leonard won the finals with the Raptors, load management helped, and it was a case for load management. So, but general long answer, overrated.
All right. Our last one, Jason Ozier.
You gotta answer wisely because you might not get invited to the run.
Can I call Ozier underrated? I'm gonna say underrated because Jason, does a lot of good things. He's not the fastest guy in the world, and he played two sports in college, and he once played two sports on the same day. And he'll tell you
So
about
he was
it.
like, he was like the
sport?
Deion
He
Sanders
played
of
lacrosse.
Princeton.
Oh, okay.
So there was a game. It was covered in the Daily News. He played a lacrosse game in the afternoon, and then a basketball game in the evening in his senior year. So in this grand scheme of Princeton basketball history, I think Jason is underrated because although his stats, he played more than I did, but his stats weren't like he wasn't a star, he wasn't an Ivy League player, but a great passer and kind of a coach on the floor. As much as it hurts me to compliment our friend Jason, who is not the most underconfident guy in the world, I will say he's underrated.
So like I just
And I want him to be my friend too.
no,
So.
I hear you. But so I didn't know that. Like he is the Deion Sanders of Princeton.
Yeah, no, he was a great lacrosse player. They won national championships, and and he was a reserve. He came off the bench freshman year, sophomore year. He was like the 6th, 7th guy. Junior year wasn't getting much playing time. Left the team before the UCLA game to concentrate on lacrosse. Came back the next year. And I'll be honest, like I wanted his spot, so I was a little pissed that he came back. But he earned his. He was like the 8th man. Didn't play a ton. We only played like 7 guys. But he was like, if there was an 8th guy, it was going to be him. He earned it. He deserved it. And great passer, great player. But the numbers won't show that. But like just to kind of coach on the floor. And you got to say he's underrated because he did win. He did play 2 Division I.
Right.
And you guys didn't even know that.
No,
I'm surprised he would tell you that right away.
But Kate, you now have firepower. So Saturday when he misses his first shot, just run by him and be like, stick to lacrosse. Or when you block his shot,
you could say Sean called you underrated. That's bullshit.
All right, well listen, Sean, do you have
I did want to ask you one other question.
Yeah, sure.
Who is your GOAT?
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh man, like I'm not as attached to Michael as others. I do respect. I'm kind of thinking it out now. I do respect. You got to respect LeBron's longevity, the statistics, the consistency, what he's doing at 40 years old. But if you're gonna, I would still say Jordan because of the. We all lived through both eras, right? Mm-hmm. Like the hysteria and, watching him do those things for those 6 championships basically in a row, besides this crazy this crazy drama of, the tragedy of losing his father, him going to play baseball, like all that kind of drama and tragedy. So I'm going to say Jordan, but and it's not like, you guys didn't watch MJ back in the day. It's just we lived through this like very intense. The league grew so much. It was appointment viewing. Like for that, even though it was a shorter amount of time, like the Jordan dominance, LeBron never had that like 6 championships basically in a row. He would have won 8 in a row probably if he had stayed. So for that and the growth and the global growth that he kind of fostered and the sneakers and all that kind of stuff, I'll give the nod to MJ. Is that a fair? Do you guys? Where are you guys on it? I know we can debate this all day.
Listen,
I'm just curious.
I would tell you MJ, and I actually think Kobe doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah. How about you?
I'm an MJ guy, but I do respect LeBron.
Yeah, there's no people who are like, how can you even bring him up? I mean, come on.
Well, maybe we could get LeBron on the podcast.
But he's not underrated.
Yeah,
But maybe compared to MJ,
that's what I'm saying. Like we could have a conversation with
anybody
him.
can be underrated. That's the beauty of
I'm
this
gonna have his
podcast.
people reach out to my
Yeah.
Well, listen, Sean, thank you so much for your
been
time.
fun.
Great stories.
Thank you.
And the fact that, I learned a lot about what you did and your career and specifically what you're doing now with the sports stories. Phenomenal. Keep it up. But thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate it.
And
Dave?
also for letting us know that Princeton lost that game.
You know, I'm sorry.
Well,
if
we
it's
have a very
voiceover.
underrated.
Can you do the voiceover over? Is it going to be a pain in the butt?
No. We'll probably have to do it now. Or you know what? In my head, I was thinking like, screw this. We're going to keep it wrong just to spite Sean.
You know, I saw it and I should have, and now I regret. I when it first came out, I'm like, this is great. I'm like, you know what? Let's. I don't want to cause a havoc. And then you said it once in the podcast, and I let it go. I'm thinking to myself, I'm just going to let it go. And then you had to say it again. I just couldn't.
This is the
I'm
fourth episode, Sean. You know, hey Ray, you guys have it wrong.
This is not. It's off to a great start. We'll fix that in post, and we'll be all good.
All right, I like it. Well, thank you again, and I will see you next week on UndeRAYted.
Have fun. See you when I see you.